So my name is Parviz Malakouti. I am the admin of the group DACA Dreamers Moving Forward. I'm also an immigration lawyer, adjunct law professor. Immigration is my thing. So today I want to talk about actionable items that a dreamer can take if you're getting married to a US citizen or legal permanent resident, or if you're already married to one, or even if you're seriously dating and you think that marriage might be the next step, okay? So before we get started, I just want to make a disclaimer. Everybody who's going through this needs to have their own private consultation to talk about their scenario. I can't talk about, it's impossible to talk about every single person's specific situation in just a public Facebook Live, but I can talk about general points and concepts that are going to elevate the understanding of you guys about this process and also give you guys actionable items that you can take even before you go to a lawyer for a consultation, okay? So I want to do this in three parts. The first part is I want to just do a basic overview of the most common processes that dreamers go through when they're getting their green card through marriage, so that we have a basis of understanding. The second thing I want to do is go through the items. I have 8 items in this little mini guide I wrote. This is a 2-page guide I wrote, okay? I don't know if you guys can read it. It says how to prepare for a marriage-based immigration process as a dreamer. I put this out for free to my group and on Facebook. So if anybody does not have this and wants it, just email me, info@malakoutilaw.com. I'll send you one right away. Okay, so we're gonna go over the 8 items in here, okay? The suggestions I make. That's gonna be the second part. And in the third part of this Facebook Live, we're just gonna open it up to all questions, okay? As last point, before I start, as I mentioned, if anybody doesn't understand something that I'm saying, if it's too confusing or if I'm not making sense, just write it in right there. Just say, hey, I didn't catch that, or hey, can you repeat that? I'll repeat it. I'll explain it in a different way, whatever you guys need, okay? So let me see here. We got, what's up, Jessica? Jessica wrote, I'm considering doing that and going for parole in place since my boyfriend is a veteran. Okay, that might be a possibility. That probably is a possibility for you, Jessica. Okay, so wow, we got 18 people on here so far. Beautiful. Okay, so first I want to go over a basic primer, okay, of how dreamers, not just dreamers, right? Anybody who's undocumented, but how dreamers go, basically the process they go to, you guys go to get legal permanent residence, okay, if you're marrying a US citizen or legal permanent resident, okay? So basically all green card processes can be put into one of 2 categories. One is adjustment of status. The other is consular processing. Adjustment of status is the process of applying for a green card by which you stay in the United States during the entire process. You don't have to leave. And somebody asked me about that. That's what Gerardo asked me. So Gerardo, the process you're referring to is called adjustment of status, okay? The second process is called consular processing. Consular processing requires you to leave the United States to go back abroad to an embassy or a consulate in usually your country and go to your interview there. Easy way to remember which process consular processing is that consular processing has the word consular in it, which means you have to go abroad, okay? We got a quick question. Jasmine, I almost missed you. Hi, Parviz. Hey, Jasmine, how are you? Glad you could join us. So you guys, if you're getting married to a US citizen, you're gonna have to go through one of these 2 processes, adjustment of status or consular processing, okay? Generally, adjustment of status is the preferable one, okay? That's the one you wanna try to aim for if possible. It's not possible for everybody, okay? Adjustment of status generally is not available to people who entered the country illegally, otherwise known as entry without inspection, okay? But on the other hand, a lot of dreamers who are visa overstays, right? They came on a visa, B1, B2 tourist visa, they overstayed the visa, they can usually, generally apply for adjustment of status, which basically means the green card process from within the United States. So the basic, again, I'm making this very, very, very basic. It's more complicated than this, but the basic distinction is that if you came to the United States on a visa and overstayed, you're probably going to be able, most are going to be able to qualify for adjustment of status. But if you came entry without inspection, or AKA illegally, you're going to have to do consular processing. Now, there's a few very big popular exceptions for somebody who came entry without inspection that allows them to adjust status even though they came quote unquote illegally, okay? We already had one of you guys mention that, and that is parole in place. Who wrote that? Jessica wrote that. Jessica wrote parole in place. Okay, so military parole in place If you qualify for military parole in place, that's something that could allow you to stay in the country and adjust status instead of having to go abroad for consular processing. So what is military parole in place? Military parole in place is available to relatives, qualifying relatives, okay, of U.S. servicemen and women or veterans. So what's a qualifying relative? Generally, it's a spouse, so husband and or wife, a parent, okay, or a child, okay? So if you're watching this right now and you have either a husband, wife, a mom, dad, or a child that's in the military, if the child is 21 years of age or older, okay, you might qualify for military parole in place. Military parole in place is not the actual green card application. What it is basically a process that you go to whereby the last entry that you had, if it was without inspection, aka legally, they parole you into the country. That's a term that means basically you're going to have been considered to have entered the country legally your last time. So they kind of give you a legal entry with parole in place, a legal, not illegal, legal entry, okay? So military parole in place is one of the big exceptions. Let me just go here and answer, see what you guys are writing. Okay. Luis wrote, hey, Parviz, nice to see you. Haven't seen you in a while. What's up, Luis? Nice to see you too. Zaira, hello. Yay wrote, my first time seeing a live from you. Thank you for doing this. My pleasure. Wrote, what if we had our 2001 application? Great question, Gabe. That's one of the other exceptions that we're going to go over. That's called a 245I petition. Jasmine, how would we prove we came with inspection if we no longer have our passport with the visa entry stamp? Excellent question, Jasmine. I'll go over that. And Lupe wrote, hello, Paris. Okay, sorry, guys. So getting back to this. So remember, where were we at? I said that there's adjustment of status, right? If you came on a visa and you overstayed, and there's consular processing, right? If you came into the country illegally, AKA without inspection. Now, one of the three big exceptions, okay, one of the three big ways that somebody who even came without inspection is allowed to stay in the United States and do adjustment of status is military parole in place, okay? Gabe brought up the 2001 application. I'm glad he did, okay? Another way that people who even entered without inspection are allowed to stay in the United States and adjust status instead of consular processing is if somebody petitioned for them, somebody applied for them before April 30th, 2001. That's known as the 245I petition, okay? Or a 245I adjustment. That's like a slang for it, okay? 245I stands for the section of the Immigration and Nationality Act, okay? That basically allowed for this exception. So that's why it's called a 245I adjustment. So if you're somebody who came to this country, entry without inspection, but somebody filed for you, let's say your mother, your father, whoever, somebody filed for you before April 30th, 2001, a petition, you might be eligible for 245I adjustment of status, which would mean you don't have to go consular process. You can stay in the United States and adjust status, okay? So that's the second big exception, okay, to people who came to this country, entry without inspection, that are therefore allowed to actually adjust status, okay? The first one was military parole in place. The second one was 245I adjustment. And the third one is, anybody know the third one? I'm gonna see if anybody knows. What's the third exception that allows people, dreamers, okay, who entered without inspection to be able to stay in the country and adjust status? Does any? Agrippina said it. Perfect. Agrippina. Advanced parole. Agrippina knows what she's talking about. Okay. So a lot of you guys know what advanced parole is or was. It still exists. It just doesn't exist for DACA recipients anymore. Advanced parole was basically a process by which DACA recipients were allowed to get a permission to leave the country, okay, for some reason, some compelling reason, and enter back into the country. And when they enter, they get a stamp. It says they were paroled into the country. So that means that turns their last entry into the United States from an entry without inspection to an entry with inspection. It's inspection or parole, okay, technical language. But it means basically that they had a legal entry, okay? So people who got that advanced parole stamp in their passport are able, usually, to adjust status, okay, if they have a path available to them. They're not forced to go abroad for consular processing, okay? Let me pause for a quick second and see here what anybody said. Okay, Jasmine, I'll get to your question. Angela wrote, active duty reserves and veterans who were discharged honorably. Yep, that's true. Agrippina wrote, Chitori. Awesome. Okay. Jaylene, I'm going to pause 1 second, get to your guys' question, and I'm going to get right back on board, and then we're going to talk about the action items, things you guys can do to prepare. Jaylene wrote, for example, my fiance was 6 when his parents brought him to the U.S. So when I want to fix his paper, when I want to fix papers, he's going to have to go back to his country. Jaylene, that depends. If he was brought into the country entry without inspection, he's probably going to have the consular process unless he falls under one of those 3 exceptions that we're talking about. Military, he qualifying for military parole in place, qualifying for 245I adjustment, or qualifying for advanced parole. Now, these are not all the exceptions. There's a few others. There's some other much more rare ones, but these are the 3 big ones, okay? And there's not really time to go over every single thing in it, okay? So remember, if you, again, you here, if you're watching this, I assume you're a dreamer getting married to a U.S. citizen, or you're close to getting married, or you're already married to a U.S. citizen, okay? You're gonna fall into a category of adjustment of status or consular processing, okay? To really, really be sure of which one you fall into, you're probably gonna have to have a consultation with a qualified lawyer. But generally, most people who entered, who had a visa overstay, okay, and are marrying a U.S. citizen, if they don't have any crimes, they can stay in adjust status. If you came, enter without inspection, generally you're going to have to consular process. Now, that's the process that you have to go through. The second big issue is a waiver necessary. Waiver, un perdón de inadmisibilidad, a waiver of inadmissibility, okay? So when people say waiver, perdón, they're talking about a waiver of inadmissibility, okay? Now, when people go abroad, okay, to consular process, okay, when dreamers go abroad, whether they need a waiver of inadmissibility, whether you need a waiver of inadmissibility, is going to depend on how much unlawful presence you've accrued. Unlawful presence. Sounds like a fancy word, but it's not that complicated for the process. Well, it actually is, but generally for dreamers, we can have a good idea of how much unlawful presence you have by doing the following, okay? Unlawful presence is the time, roughly can be defined as the time that you're in the United States without having any status or period of authorized stay past your 18th birthday. So if you are watching this right now and you got DACA before your 18th birthday and you've had DACA all the way straight through until now, there's a good chance you have no unlawful presence. If you have no unlawful presence, you probably don't need a waiver of inadmissibility, okay? So is everybody following me so far? Is everybody following me? I need some feedback from you guys, okay? So that's if you had DACA before your 18th birthday, okay? So a lot of dreamers, there's a huge misconception. They automatically assume that consular processing and needing a waiver go together. Oftentimes they do go together. A dreamer has to consular process, meaning leave the country, and they also need a waiver, but it doesn't always go together, okay? If the dreamer has not accrued unlawful presence, they probably don't need a waiver of inadmissibility, which means they go abroad to consular process just the same way somebody who was not undocumented would go through the process, okay? So everybody's saying that they follow so far. Good. Okay, great. Okay, so that's an easy way to know if you have no unlawful presence for the purposes of this discussion is, did you get DACA before your 18th birthday and you have it all the way to now and you never let it lapse? You never let it expire. If you let your DACA expire at any point, then you started accruing unlawful presence on a day-by-day basis. Unlawful presence is measured by the days. So somebody has 160 days of unlawful presence, 360 days, 2 years of unlawful presence. A lot of you guys, the older dreamers, you guys that are over 30, you're gonna have years of unlawful presence, some of you. Now, here's how do you know when you've accrued enough unlawful presence to the point where you need a waiver? Here's the general rule, and this is where the 3 and 10-year bar comes in, okay? I'm sure you guys have heard. Has anybody heard of the 3-year bar or the 10-year bar? Has anybody heard of this? Tell me, right in there, in the comments if you have, okay? And while you guys are doing that, I'm going to go through your questions real quickly. Has anybody heard of the 3 or 10-year bar? So tell me below, just yes I have or no I haven't, okay? Okay, so let me just go through some quick questions. We're going to take a quick pause and then we're going to go to these questions. Okay, Jalen wrote, oh yeah, I already answered that question. Jalen, depends. We need to know. So Jalen, we need to know more about how he came to this country and whether he's accrued unlawful presence or not. And if so, how much? Geraldo wrote, and so in your experience, those that have to travel back to the country, are there any issues for them coming back? Geraldo, that's probably the single biggest concern. When we send somebody abroad for consular processing is to make sure that they come back into the country. So Yeah, there can be issues. Knock on wood. Me personally, my cases have gone well, but that is an issue, and it does happen that somebody gets stuck outside of, that's the truth. But there are, Gerardo, going back to that question, there are ways, there are things we do to decrease the chances that there's a problem when they go out of the country. We submit FOIA requests to get all their records. We send them for FBI fingerprints, Cal DOJ fingerprints to get their history and all that. Okay, stay put, guys. I'm answering your question. My parents applied for residency in 2001. My mom's USA citizen brother petitioned for us. Unfortunately, I was taken out of the application at 21. Well, I still have to go out of the country. Also, how long is the wait for my parents to get their green card? We came from Mexico. Oh, Gabe, you got a lot of questions, brother. My parents applied for residency in 2001. My mom's USA citizen brother petitioned for us. Okay, you were taken out. Okay, so that's called an age out, Gabe. So if you aged out of the application at 21, well, I still have to go outside of the country. So it's not clear to me, Gabe, whether you're still an active part of somebody's petition. Okay, so if you aged out of the petition that your uncle made for your parents, then no, you're not a part of that anymore. But if he sent that application before April 30th, 2001, you may qualify for 245-1A adjustment if you get the visa eligibility from somewhere else. Okay, I don't know if that makes sense to you, but that's the best I can answer with that limited info. Gabe, okay, so I did have DACA before 18. So it sounds like you don't have unlawful presence. Okay, so Gabe, for you, the challenge would be if you aged out of that application, you need to have a visa available to you somehow. Okay, great info, yes, yes, yes. And thank you for your patience. I'm just trying to race through your comments right now. Sitali, how do you pronounce your name? Is that right, Zitali? What if you applied before but didn't receive until you're like 18 and a half? Perfect, Zitali. Okay, so that's a great question. So that basically would mean, Zitali, that you have unlawful presence, but under 180 days of it. If that's the case, you do not have a bar of a 3 or 10-year bar. Okay, so I'll go over that in a quick second. Okay, 10-year, no, yes. Okay, so some of you have heard of the 3 and 10-year bar, some of you haven't. Nuvia wrote, more than 180 days of unlawful presence is when you have to do a waiver. That's exactly right, Nuvia. If you have between 180 and 365 days of unlawful presence, you're subject to the 3-year bar if you leave. If you have over 365 days of unlawful presence, then you're subject to the 10-year bar if you leave the United States. Oh man, okay. Wow, there's a lot of questions. Okay, sorry guys. So I'm gonna save all these questions, but I want to continue on with the presentation so that we can actually get to the items, and then I'm going to answer every single person's question. I'm not going to leave until the questions are all answered. So hold those questions. Let's get back to what I was talking about. Okay, so the 3 and 10-year bar. Okay, so if you have no unlawful presence, okay, meaning you got DACA before you turned 18, you renewed it all the way through until today, you never had a gap, okay, then you can go abroad. Okay, if you entered the country without inspection, you probably need to go abroad to do consular processing, but you're not going to need a waiver of inadmissibility. Okay, you're not going to need one. If you have between 0 and 180 days of unlawful presence, you've accrued some unlawful presence, okay, but the 3 or 10-year bar still does not hit yet. So you could still go abroad for consular processing if you came to the United States without inspection. Okay, so even if you got DACA when you were 18 and a half, as long as that's not 18 and a half and 1 day, but if you got DACA from any time before your 18th birthday through your 18th birthday, and let's say 18th birthday in 180 days, you still can go abroad consular process without needing a waiver of inadmissibility. Now, if you have between 180 and 365 days of unlawful presence, okay, then you need a waiver if you go abroad to consular process. If you don't get a waiver, then you're going to be subject to what's called the 3-year bar. And that means basically that if you leave the country with between 180 to 365 days of unlawful presence, you're not going to be able to come back into the United States for 3 years. That's the 3-year bar. The last bar, saving the last bar for least, is the 10-year bar. So if you've accrued over 365 days of unlawful presence, if you leave the country to do consular processing, you need to have a waiver of inadmissibility to be able to come back. If not, you're going to be subject to the 10-year bar. Okay, that's the 3 and 10-year bar. Okay, so more than 3. So anybody who got DACA when they were 19 or older, you're gonna have at least 365 days of unlawful presence. Okay, does that make sense so far? Before we continue, does everybody understand who needs a waiver of inadmissibility depending on how much unlawful presence you had? Okay, does everybody understand that? Tell me yes or no, and if no, what's the part you don't understand? And I'll go over that one more time. And no shame in your game. If you didn't understand, if you didn't get it, no problem. These are complicated subjects, and I'm here to explain it all to you guys and break it down. Hell, I do it every day on YouTube videos anyway. Okay, we got 2 yeses. Does anybody not understand? Okay, does anybody not understand my explanation of who needs to go abroad and who would need a waiver of inadmissibility if they go abroad? Okay, we got all yeses so far. That's amazing. Luis, self-deportation? No, we're not talking about self-deportation, Luis. The 3 and 10 year bar also apply if you do self-deportation. But I'm talking about is if you, remember this Facebook Live is for people who are marrying US citizens or legal permanent residents, or you already got married to a legal permanent resident or US citizen. Okay, so I want to clarify that. I'm talking about people who fall in this category, people who are marrying US citizens or legal permanent residents or already got married to one. Okay, so we're talking about a marriage-based process here. It's a little bit of a different analysis if it's not a marriage-based process. Okay, everybody so far who's responded said that they got it, they understood. Okay, good. So this is if we're talking, so everything I just spoke about, this is assuming that you have only one ground of inadmissibility. A ground of inadmissibility is something that you have that forbids you from A, entering the United States, B, getting a visa to enter the United States, and C, adjusting status, right? Which is, remember what we said, adjustment of status is staying in the United States for the green card process, okay? Most dreamers only have one ground of inadmissibility if they have it, which is going to be the unlawful presence. But if you committed a crime involving moral turpitude, if you committed a crime of domestic violence, if you committed certain numbers of crimes, you may have an additional ground of inadmissibility. That's going to require different analysis, related analysis, but a different analysis. Okay, so I'm doing this Facebook Live for what I think are the majority of people because I don't know everybody's specific situation. Okay, so Dalia, I see your question. I'll get to that at the end because I just want to make sure that we race through this. Okay, so far I've talked about 3 options. Okay, for marriage-based processes, right? Adjustment of status, which is you stay in the United States for the second, consular processing without a waiver. Right? And the third process that I've spoken about is if you have to consular process and you do need a waiver, waiver of inadmissibility. Those are 3. There's actually a 4th option, which is much, much, much rarer. It's not terribly rare, but it's rare, which is that you might be eligible to adjust status in the United States, but you need a waiver actually, a waiver of inadmissibility. And the reason that could happen is that you might need a waiver for a ground of inadmissibility besides unlawful presence. For example, the crime or a material misrepresentation on an immigration application, which means a lie on an immigration application, something like that. Okay, so there's actually a 4th one, but the vast majority of you guys are going to fall into one of these 3 categories. Either you need to adjust status, you're eligible to adjust status, or you consular process without a waiver of inadmissibility, or you need to consular process with a waiver of inadmissibility. Okay, so let's move on, okay? So those are generally what you guys are going through, okay? Now, this document, okay, just so I have an idea, who got this document from me, okay? Who emailed me asking for this document? I put this up about 3 weeks ago. I put this up and I said, hey, if anybody wants this, I can send it to you. Just go ahead and say, got it or didn't get it in the comments, so I have an idea of how many people have seen this already. It's a 2-page document I made, and it's basically, it reads, how to prepare for a marriage-based immigration process as a dreamer. Attorney Parviz Malakouti. That's me, by the way, in case you didn't know. I wrote this document. So anybody who has not gotten this, email me after this Facebook Live. I'll email this to you for free, of course, okay? This is what we're going to be going over, okay? We're going to be going over 8 items, 8 simple actions that you guys can take if you're about to go into a marriage-based process, okay, to increase the chances of having a successful process. No guarantees, increasing chances, okay? Again, we're not talking about guarantees. That's not the way immigration works. There's no guarantee. So let me take a look. Who got this? We got, okay, didn't get it. Gerardo got it. Satali didn't get it. Satali, you're new to the group, so I don't think you would have seen it. Didn't. Okay, so most of you guys did not get it. That's no problem at all. I'm going to read to you from it, and it's short enough that I can read actually every single item, okay? And just go ahead, all you guys, email me at info@malakoutilaw.com. Info@malakoutilaw.com. I'll send you a copy of this, okay? And then once you get that copy, if you want, you can go back and watch this Facebook Live over again, because I'm going to save this and have this up on the group. Okay, so here's the thing. All the important information on this is written on the last page. I have 8 items here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. 5, 6, 7, 7, 8. I guess I forgot about the number 7. And what I have at the top is action items for dreamers getting married to U.S. citizens. Okay, so I'm going to go through each one of these 8 items. I'm going to explain, I'm going to say what the item is, what the action item is, and why, okay, it can improve your chances of getting a green card on a marriage-based process, okay? Yasir, I see your question. I will get to your question. I'm just answering questions at the end, okay, because I want to get through this without interruption. Okay. Action item number 1, okay. Gather all of your immigration documents, parentheses, previous petitions, applications, DACA, and all renewals, and give them descriptive labels, scan and save them to a cloud. So all I'm saying with this is gather your documents, gather them all, scan and save them. This is incredibly important. Don't sleep on this and think, oh yeah, he's just saying get organized, blah, blah, blah. This is incredibly important, okay? Because when you enter this process, especially if you're working with a lawyer, which really you should, because these are complicated processes, when you're dealing with the lawyer, okay, so many times, okay, it happens so often that there's a race against the clock for some reason, okay? For some reason, there's a race against the clock. And I'll tell you actually one of the most common things that makes there be a hurry in this application process. And when there's a race against the clock and you can't find a document, okay, it can have really adverse consequences, okay? That's number 1. Number 2, when you go to a lawyer for a consultation, okay, when you have these documents, you're gonna get a way better consultation. You're gonna provide the lawyer with the tools, the information to really give you, if it's a qualified lawyer, of course, to really give you a great, analysis of your situation, okay? So gather the documents, scan them, and give them descriptive labels. This is a very important part, okay? Descriptive. Let me give you an example. This is not a descriptive label, okay? A document that's on your folder that says DACA. What is it in DACA? Is it your renewal? Is it your initial application? Is it the I-765? Is it your renewal from 2016? Is it your renewal from 2008? That's not descriptive, okay? You cannot tell what is in that document by reading DACA. This is a descriptive document label, and this is how you should be labeling it. I-821D, DACA renewal, September 19th, 2018, signed. That's a descriptive title for a document. That's the way that you should title your documents. It'll save you a ton of trouble. It'll save your lawyer trouble. And when you save your lawyer trouble, he can do a better job for you and obviously get you a green card. Okay, so that's the first item. Let's move on to the second one. The second item is one that a lot of people are going to be surprised, okay, about. And that's to start to repair your credit if you have bad credit or build your credit. So why are we talking about credit? Am I just making a suggestion that's good for your life in general? Yeah, it is also good for your life in general. But does this have actually anything to do with a marriage-based process for dreamers? Yes, it does. Absolutely, it does. Okay, and let me explain. Some of you guys know there's a new public charge rule that came out. Has anybody, tell me in the comments, has anybody heard about the new public charge rule that came out February 24th? It was big news in the immigration community. It went into effect February 24th. La carga pública, okay? Has anybody heard of that? Okay, anybody heard of the public charge rule? Tell me. The public charge rule is a new rule that came out for anybody that's applying for a green card through adjustment of status. It's actually not a new rule. The rule's been around forever, but this new implementation of the rule, okay, basically dives deep into the applicant's life, okay? USCIS dives deep into the applicant's life to see how likely you are to become reliant on public services in the future, meaning welfare. They're trying to find people who are likely to go on welfare. So they go deep into your life, okay? They ask you about your assets, your debts. They ask you for your education level, skills that you have, language ability, para las personas que hablan español, okay, si hablas otros idiomas, anything that can help your marketability, okay? They're going to analyze all of that. And one thing that's asked now, okay, it's not optional, it is mandatory to send with the new I-944 form is your credit report, okay? So you now have to send your credit report if you're adjusting status within the United States. And you better believe if you send the credit report, a low score is bad and a high score is good. Obviously, everybody knows that, okay? So even before the public charge rule, having a good credit was a great thing to have for your life, but now it actually is relevant, very relevant to immigration, okay? So build your credit and repair your credit if you have poor credit. If you guys need materials on that, one of my very best friends is a lawyer. He's a credit repair attorney. His name's Shiva Bhaskar. I went to UCLA with him. We've been friends for 18 years. Amazing guy. He puts out a ton of free content, YouTube videos, guides, all this stuff. His company is Tier 1 Credit. If you want to hire him, of course you can hire him, but you don't even have to hire him. If you have the patience to go through and do these things yourself, he puts out so much free content. You know, you can improve your credit on your own just with the stuff he has there. So Tier 1 Credit, TIER 1 Credit, if you guys want resources on how to build your credit. So some of you have heard, I'm reading through the comments. Jasmine wrote yes, Jose wrote yes, Brenda yes, Sitali yes, okay, Hisel yes. Most of you guys heard. Gerardo didn't hear about it. Okay, good. Now you know about it, Gerardo, no problem. Okay, Sitali wrote, what do you think would be a good score number to be at? So Sitali, there's no cutoff. Okay, so we didn't get guidance from immigration that says, oh, 720 and above, you're approved. 719 and below, you're denied. We don't get anything like that. So the answer is going to be the higher the better. The higher the better. Okay. Okay. Let's move on. That's item number 2. Okay. So by the way, did anybody catch that I said that that's only for adjustment of status? You don't have to submit a credit report if you're doing consular processing. So remember the 3 processes that we talked about for you guys: adjustment of status, consular processing without a waiver, and consular processing with a waiver. This is not necessarily going to apply for those last 2 processes, but it will apply for those of you who are going to be looking to adjust status. The reason I have it in here on my guide for all of you guys is because I don't know which one of you guys are going to do consular processing or adjustment of status. Many of you are not going to know actually until you go to a lawyer, okay? Because you're not going to be sure whether you're going to be eligible to adjust status. So my opinion is, I make it a blanket recommendation for anybody that's in this situation because there's a chance, a good chance, that you're going to be adjusting status and need to do that. Okay. Okay. Let's move it on. Move it on. Numero tres. Make a Freedom of Information Act request from USCIS. Okay. Freedom of Information Act. Who knows what a Freedom of Information Act is? Okay. That stands for FOIA. FOIA. Does anybody know Agrippina? I'm trying to wink. Agrippina, does anybody know what a Freedom of Information Act request is? Just tell me in the comments yes or no, so I have an idea of how many of you guys know and don't know. Okay. Tell me. I ain't going forward until I see some answers. I need to know roughly how many people know what a FOIA request is. Okay, so just write yes or no. Adolfo, hey, what's up, Adolfo? He knows. Adolfo. That's right, FOIA with the capital FOIA. FOIA. Okay, so we got Janderson, no. Adolfo wrote FOIA, so I assume, Adolfo, you know what it is. Omar, no. Brendan, no. Dahlia, no. Jasmine, yes. Adolfo wrote all your immigration records. That's absolutely right. No. Okay, so most of you guys don't know what a Freedom of Information Act request is. Okay, so Freedom of Information Act is a law that passed in Congress in the 60s that gives the right to anybody to demand any information from any government agency. Powerful, super powerful, right? Now there's exceptions. You can't demand that the Army give you the nuclear codes. Hey, I'm Parviz Malakouti. I'm filing a Freedom of Information Act request. I want to know the nuclear codes, and I want to know actually where our nuclear warheads are stored in the United States. That doesn't work. That falls under an exception, which is a national security exception. So there's exceptions, okay, for the government to be able to refuse to give you information. But generally, okay, you can get any information from any government agency. So this is an incredibly powerful tool that we use in immigration, especially as practitioners, as lawyers, okay? When we do a case of anybody when we sign a case of anybody that's undocumented, we start firing off Freedom of Information Act requests to different immigration agencies so we can get all your guys' records, okay? So we get all your records, we get to see everything that has been submitted on your behalf in your entire life, okay? So if you've let's say that you've just had DACA, okay? Let's say you're listening to this right now. The only thing that you think has been filed on your behalf is DACA. You file DACA initial application and renewal with USCIS. That's United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. That's the agency, okay? So you make a Freedom of Information Act request to FOIA, and you basically say, I want all my DACA renewals, I want my initial application, and you also put a catch-all provision at the end, okay, which is just like a safety net. And I want anything that you have related to immigration with my name on it, or any file relating to me, okay? You put that at the end just to basically try to catch anything that they have related to you that you might not know about. That's a FOIA request, okay? Anybody can do this. You don't have to be a lawyer to do this, okay? You do have to make the request in a proper way, okay? And I've been meaning to do a video on making a proper FOIA request, which I haven't done yet. So if you're patient enough to wait for my video, I'll come out with that video. Otherwise, just get on Google and start researching how to do a Freedom of Information Act request, okay? So you want to get all those. Now, why is this important for going through the marriage-based process, right? That's the purpose of this Facebook Live. You want to get all your records. You want to see the full records, okay, of everything, every application that has been filed for you and what you've written on any application. Super important, super duper important, okay? Because you need to know exactly what you have stated on previous applications. I had a client yesterday that we're doing the consular processing with a waiver of inadmissibility through, okay? He asked me to renew his DACA while we're going through this process. I said, sure. I dug up his old DACA application, okay? And I saw that he answered something that he should not have answered on that DACA application, okay? He should not have done that, okay? Now, it wasn't his fault. He was mistaken and there was confusion. He even went to a preparer. So really probably the preparer failed him on that. But we were able to see that, okay, that answer because we had his previous records. So having your previous records are so critical in going through this process, especially to make sure that you're not getting stuck outside the country if you end up going through consular processing. Does everybody understand what I just said? How does that make sense, what I just said? Does everybody understand what a Freedom of Information Act request and why it's really important and something that can help you guys going through this process? Just tell me yes or no. And let me check my battery. All right, I'm down to 9%. I guess I'm racing through this battery right now. So I'm gonna have to go through this real quick. I'm gonna have to go very quickly through this, okay? So you guys, yeses are rolling in, yes, okay. Item number four on this, find a reputable nonprofit organization and start volunteering immediately for at least twice per month for at least 2 hours each time. Okay. Now, why am I asking you guys, why am I saying that people going through, dreamers going through a marriage-based process should volunteer? And the reason is that this is something that can be a very important factor if you're going to apply for a waiver of inadmissibility. Okay. Agrippina, usually 2 to 3 months, but can be longer. So when you're filing for a waiver of inadmissibility, okay, the way it's adjudicated, the way USCIS decides whether you deserve a waiver of inadmissibility is 2-factor test. The first is you have to show extreme hardship to a qualifying relative. Extreme hardship, that's the magic term, okay, which means they're really gonna suffer. Your qualifying relative is really gonna suffer if you're not able to get immigration status. Qualifying relative for an I-601A is your spouse or your parent. Those are the only 2 types of qualifying relatives, not a child, unfortunately. That's not a qualifying relative. So that's the first factor. What does that have to do with volunteering? Not much, not really. Okay, it's the second factor for deciding the I-601A, which has to do with volunteering, which is that the second element, the second factor to get an approval on a waiver for you guys is you have to show that that you merit the discretion of the Attorney General. Merit the discretion. Fancy term. What does that mean? It means you got to show you're a good person. You got to show you're a good person and you deserve to stay in the United States. So how do you show you're a good person? You show ties to the community. You show that you're the type of person that does things for other people. You volunteer in your community. You do things at church, synagogue, mosque, whatever it is. that's how you show. I mean, that's kind of makes sense, right? Because that's how we think about people. If somebody's volunteering and doing things and always helping people and they've been doing it for years, we think, damn, that's a good person. Okay, that's like a real good-hearted person. That's how volunteer work can help you, okay, in qualifying, actually not qualifying, but in getting approved for the I-601A waiver, provisional waiver. That's why I have number 4 as find a reputable nonprofit organization and volunteer. Now, what if you're adjusting status? Remember, we said 3 processes that I talked about at the beginning: adjusting status, consular process without a waiver, third consular process with a waiver. Okay, so if you're doing one of the first 2, adjusting status or doing consular process without a waiver, you're probably not going to need a waiver, which means you might not need to show that you merit the discretion of the Attorney General. Okay, so in those 2 cases, maybe not as important. But for those of you who need the waiver of inadmissibility, it's definitely going to be important. And the reason I say you guys should get started on this right away is because you're not going to know for sure whether you need the waiver, okay, until you get closer to the process, until you have a consultation with a lawyer, right? So get started right away, okay? Get started right away. What's the worst that happens? You volunteer for 3-4 months at a cause that's close to your heart. You do good in the community. You help yourself professionally. You improve your resume. And then you find out, oh, I didn't need it for immigration. And then you stop if you want. That's not bad, right? That's the worst case scenario. Best case scenario, you get started on this 4 or 5 months ahead of time. And by the time you go to see that lawyer, you already say, hey, I've been volunteering, sucker. And I have a record of it. I'm all ready to go to make a showing of merit of discretion, okay? Does everybody understand that so far? Does that make sense before I continue on? Tell me, just say yes or no. Yes or no, please. All right, moving on, guys. Number 5 and number 6 are simple ones, super simple ones, but there's so much confusion over these 2 things, okay? Number 5 is stay clear of firearms, guns, okay? If you are a dreamer in the United States, you cannot have a gun, okay, per federal law. You cannot have a gun. It does not matter what your state law says. It doesn't matter if you went to a gun range and they gave you a gun. It doesn't mean if you were able to walk out of a gun store with a gun. It doesn't mean if you were allowed into a gun show. That does not matter. It is federally illegal for any undocumented person to have possession of a gun. And for the purposes of that statute, which is 18 USC 922G, a dreamer, even with DACA, is undocumented, okay? So this is federal statute, it's been established, and it's already been tested in court cases, okay? There's a court case from California, 2018, okay? A DACA recipient got charged with this statute. He was caught with guns. He tried to make the argument in court that I'm not undocumented for the purpose of this statute because I have DACA, and DACA allows me to stay in this country. He lost, okay? He lost, and he's dealing with those consequences right now. So this can throw a big loop into your process, okay? If you have a gun, if you're possessing a gun while being undocumented, you're breaking federal law, and that's definitely something that has a chance of hurting your immigration process. So, Satali, no to the gun ranges. No possession. You see this cell phone? I have possession of this cell phone because it's in my hand. Okay, it's in my hand. You see this notebook? I have possession of this notebook because it's in my hand. If somebody were to hand me a gun right now, pretend I have a gun in my hand, I have possession of this gun. I give it back to the person, I already broke the law. I possessed a firearm as an undocumented individual. So no gun range, don't have a gun in your hands. Okay, that's the standard. Okay, and this has to do, I do understand to some extent why there's confusion about this, because we have a federal system of government, which means we have state law and we have federal law, and it's 2 different legal systems. It can be confusing, but federal law reigns supreme over the land. So it does not matter if a state allows you, if your state gives you a permit or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's federally illegal, okay? So does everybody understand number 5? Does anybody have any questions about firearms? I know there's 19 people here. I know somebody has a question about firearms. I know somebody does, okay? Because I made a video on this. I put it on my YouTube channel, Dreamer TV, and there's over 60 comments of dreamers going back and forth about this issue. It's one of my most popular videos. I average like 19 views per day on that video. So I know people have questions about this, okay? So does anybody have a question about firearms? And staying clear of firearms, okay? before we move on to number 6. Jasmine wrote, good to know. I wanted to go to a gun range with a friend. Didn't realize it was the same as owning. Jasmine, it's possession. So yes, stay away. Stay away. Abby, that's how they get you. That is how they get you, Abby. Giselle, thank you for clearing that up. No firearms, period. Well said, Giselle. Abby, sorry, just joined the live. What questions are you guys reading from? Okay. So Abby, I'm reading from this document. I'm talking about this document. This is a document that I made. You can recognize the blue, dark, or light blue and baby blue. What do you guys think about the colors? Is this a good color? I chose it myself. This is a document I made. It's how to prepare for a marriage-based immigration process as a dreamer. Attorney Parviz Malakouti. I made this. It's only a 2-page document, very simple. I made it available to all dreamers in my group. If you don't have this and you want it, just email me. Anybody, email me, info@malakoutilaw.com. I'll shoot you a copy of that. Obviously free, no problem. Okay, so this is what I'm reading from. Okay. Okay, so we got a few questions before we move on. I know people like talking about firearms. I know it. Okay. Anahi, when you go to the shooting range, do they take your ID down number? Or certainly some do. I don't know if every single one of them do, Anahi, but yeah, certainly some of them do. Jose, a great video. I got a lot of good info I'm sharing with friends. Okay, cool, Jose. Glad to be your friends. Satali wrote, wait, what about BB guns? I don't know the answer to that, Zatali. I don't know if BB guns are, I mean, to be honest, that would probably require research for me to actually find out what the law is on that point. I don't know if BB guns apply, but I know if I were a dreamer, I wouldn't take the risk. I just would not mess with it. Okay, so we have no more questions about number 5. Let's go to number 6. Okay, so if number 5 is firearms, stay clear of firearms, who knows what number 6 is going to be? Stay clear of, fill in the blank. What do you think number 6 is going to be? Okay, a big topic that comes up with dreamers. Stay clear of firearms, and what's the other one? Anybody have any guess? Anybody want to guess what number 6 is? Okay. Stay clear of any involvement with, what's the word? Anybody have a guess? Anybody? Bueller? Is there some brave soul out there that wants to guess what this is? It's a kind of drug. Jasmine hit it. Jasmine has it. Marijuana. Good job, Jasmine. Jasmine, I award you 3,575 points for that answer. Okay. Marijuana. Okay. Yes, illegal substances too, but that goes, yeah, exactly. Illegal substances too, but marijuana. Now, let me ask you something. If you're a dreamer in a state that has legalized marijuana, California, for example, if you're a dreamer in a state that has legalized marijuana, are you breaking federal law if you consume marijuana in that state that has made it legal in their state? I want everybody to answer. There's 17. Tell me what you think, guys. Yes or no? Are you breaking the law if you're a dreamer consuming marijuana in a state that has legalized it? I want to see what you guys say. Okay, so give me some answers. Jasmine wrote yes. I'm not gonna answer yet, Jasmine. Yariela wrote yes. Janison wrote yes. Anahi wrote yes. You're breaking the law. Gerardo wrote yes. Alma Gabriel Martinez, yes. Everybody's saying yes. Is anybody thinking no? Gerardo wrote, so that's only state. Okay, I can't hold it in anymore. Gerardo, that's exactly right. That's only state law. Federal law reigns supreme, okay? So when a state has legalized an activity, but it's illegal under federal law, for the purposes of immigration, it's still illegal. Okay, super important to remember this. This is critical. It's the same principle. It's the same principle as the firearms that we're talking about. Okay, same principle. Okay, so why am I saying this? Am I saying this because marijuana is so bad? No, I don't care. Okay, I don't care about marijuana. I'm talking about what's going to get you to the finish line as a dreamer, which is a green card. Okay, and staying clear of things that are going to put obstacles in your path. If anybody's wondering if any dreamers have actually come into trouble, okay, from getting marijuana, the answer is absolutely yes, they have. Okay, there's been some very well-known cases. There was a really well-known case last summer. It made all the news rounds of a dreamer who went to Ciudad de Juarez, Mexico, to consular process, and it was discovered that he had consumed marijuana there. He was, boom, hit with inadmissibility, couldn't come back to the United States. Okay, so yes, it is still breaking the law federally, and yes, it can, and if discovered, will be a problem for your immigration application. Abby, like if you go and pay, okay, Abby, but I think there are loopholes to that. Uh, Abby, there are not loopholes to this. The only thing is, if you are inadmissible, you can try to apply for a waiver if it's a small amount of marijuana. So if applying for a waiver and paying a lawyer $4,000 for that waiver and delaying your process by a year or two seems like a loophole to you, then that's a loophole. Okay, but no, that's not. You can't do it. So Satali wrote, so what if your spouse is the one consuming? Will it affect me? Okay, Satali, technically, no, you're not responsible for what your spouse does. But the reality is, if you're caught with it or if it's something that can be pinned on you, that could be a problem. Okay. Um, okay, let's move it on. Let's move it on. Okay, so we got, is everybody clear on marijuana before we move on to number 7 and 8? Is everybody clear on marijuana? Just give me a yes or a no or a maybe so. Tell me what you guys, where's everybody's level of understanding here? Does everybody understand what I mentioned about marijuana? Waiting for answers before I continue. Waiting. I need to be like one of those professors. I'm not going forward until I get an answer from somebody in this class. Okay, cool. Everybody's okay. So I got a bunch of yeses. Thank you guys. Okay, perfect. And the reason I'm stopping is because I want to make sure that anybody who doesn't understand has the opportunity to pipe up and say, so I can explain it. Okay, beautiful. Let's move on. Number 7. If you've ever been convicted or even just arrested, gather all arrest and conviction records from the relevant courts and law enforcement agencies. For convictions, the relevant court is usually the court you were convicted in. Okay? For arrests, the relevant law enforcement agency is usually the law enforcement agency that arrested you. Okay? So this is saying for number 7, get all the documents from the courts and the police departments if you've ever been convicted of any crime or even just arrested. You have to get it if you've been arrested too. Okay? Now, somebody I'm sure is thinking, well, what if I was arrested and it was dismissed? You still have to get it if you're arrested. So if you're arrested, no matter what happens, you need to get all those documents. Okay, that's going to be very, very important for your process, and that's going to be absolutely critical when you go to a lawyer. Okay, especially if you go to a consultation and you have those documents, you're going to get a much better consultation. You're going to give the lawyer the tools to really be able to dig in and tell you what's available to you in your case, how long it's going to take, what the chances of success are, and all that, right? Because going to a lawyer is expensive, right? You got to pay $200, $300, $400 for a consultation. Okay, you want to have a good consultation. You want to get your money's worth. Okay, if you have those documents when you go in, you're going to get your money's worth. Okay, so that doesn't apply to everybody, right? That applies if you've been arrested or convicted of something. Okay, but some of you probably, if the DACA figures are to be believed, about 1/16 of you have been either arrested or convicted. Okay, so probably about 7-8%. Okay, on average. Okay, so if there's 19 people watching this, 2 of you, this applies to 2 of you. Okay, okay. Everybody clear on number 7 on what to do if you've ever been arrested or convicted. Okay, and Gabe says I'm a teacher. I love it. That's awesome, Gabe. What do you teach, Gabe? I'm an adjunct law professor as well too. Actually, I teach an immigration law class to undergraduate students at Nevada State College. Gerardo wrote, "Guns bad, weeds bad." Got it. Good one. Gerardo got it. Okay. I wrote probation. Never arrested, but I did community service under my probation for driving without a license. Okay. Okay. Satali says she understood. So we're going with We're going based on Zatali. Zatali understands, so we're moving on. Number 8. Okay. So before we get to number 8, Gabriel, he teaches 7th and 8th grade science and math. Ugh, good luck with kids of that age. Okay, let's recap before we get to the last one. Okay, number 1, gather all of your immigration documents, scan and save them to a cloud. Number 2, start to repair build credit. Number 3, make a Freedom of Information Act request, at least of USCIS and maybe of ICE, CBP, and other organizations as well. Number 4, find a reputable nonprofit organization and start volunteering immediately. Number 5, stay clear of firearms. Number 6, stay clear of marijuana. Number 7, if you've ever been convicted or even just arrested, gather all arrest and conviction records from the relevant courts and law enforcement agencies. Okay, so that's 1 through 7. Number 8, the last one is, drum roll, brrr, file and pay any back taxes that you owe. Okay, so you're getting married to a US citizen, or you're recently married to a US citizen, you're gearing up for this process, okay? You need to go back, and if you've had any years that you didn't file and pay income taxes, you need to file and pay them, okay? Uncle Sam wants his money, okay? Uncle Sam wants that cash. He doesn't care if you're undocumented, okay? The government wants his money. It does not care who you are, what your status is. If you're earning money, they want the money, okay? And that is something, it is the law, okay? You have to file and pay income taxes, okay? And it's also something that can create a big problem in your immigration application, okay, in your immigration process. So that's one that matters whether you're doing the adjustment of status. Remember, we said 3 processes that are common to dreamers getting married, okay? Adjustment of status, consular process without a waiver, and consular process with a waiver. For all 3, you want to have a clean tax record, okay, of payment and taxes. If you have a bunch of, somebody I'm sure is sitting here and thinking, oh shit, I didn't pay for 10 years or 5 years or whatever. It's never too late, okay? You're still going to be in a better position if you go back, file them and pay. If you are a low earner for a lot of years, you may not have to pay that much, okay? You're going to have to pay some penalties, but the penalties typically tend to be a percentage of what you would have owed, okay? I'm not a tax professional, so I'm not even going to try to pretend to go into specifics on that. But if you really have enough of a mess of a tax situation, go see a professional and deal with that, okay? And right on cue, somebody asked me a specific tax question. Right as I said, I'm not an expert. Would you do an amendment if I forgot to file a 1099 for 2019? Brenda, I'm not going to comment on tax advice. I'm sorry, Brenda, I'm not going to do it because that's not my wheelhouse, okay? So for that, I recommend you go to a CPA or a tax attorney. You probably don't need an attorney. You could probably go to a CPA. So I stay in my lane, okay? And once we start talking about exactly the best way of doing these old taxes, it's out of my lane. So yeah. Okay. Gabe did teach for American NYC. We're not done yet, guys. I'm going to wrap up and then we're going to get to your questions. So this went way longer than I thought it would. Abby said, I knew you gave me professor vibes. I hope it's cool professor vibes. Anna, he wrote, what if you made too little to file taxes? Does that affect the process? Anna, I think you should file the taxes even if you make too little to pay. Okay, when you file taxes and you don't owe taxes, all that happens is you file, you get a record, they say, oh, no tax bill, and that's it. Okay, so that's what I would. Okay. Geraldo, is there an average time frame for those who step out of the consular process once married? Geraldo, if you're talking about the time that they stay outside of the country for it, if it's a smooth process, if there's no issues, a week, okay? That's about how long it takes, a week in Mexico if you're from Mexico. Okay, excuse me. The last thing I want to say about these 8 items before I go back, and I have your questions, even for those of you that were on the other Facebook Live that was disconnected, I'm going to go back, I'm going to go through all the questions. Stay tuned even if you get your question answered, because somebody else might ask a question that relates to you. Before I get to that, okay, one last word about these 8 items. This information means nothing if you don't act on it, okay? So hearing about this, reading this, watching this Facebook Live, and just keeping it up here and not doing anything, it means nothing. It's worthless. It's worthless. You have to take the actions, okay, in order for this to have an effect, okay? So that's all I'll say about that.